My name is Kiani, and I debated for Dr. P in the 90s. And we're going to try to do this and say goodbye to our friend. When I first came to Lexington in 1990 to visit the campus and meet Dr. P there was no amount of imagination that could have predicted how much my life would change. It really does sound cliche to say he taught through his actions and not his words, but it's so true. He taught us by how he lived his life and how he interacted with all that came into his orbit. He was always, and I mean always, the smartest person in the room, but he would never carry himself that way. He could have a conversation about the most complicated matters of the world and then pivot to a Rolling Stones article he had read about a new band. Over the last few weeks, I've read emails from all generations that had a similar tone. JW was the most influential person in my educational life. I have JW to thank for my closest friendships in the world. I am successful because of JW. Decades upon decades of interactions and influences, he was truly a legend. He was iconic. I couldn't imagine who I would be without Dr. P. So many memories, so many stories, so many good times and events, so many mixtapes, and of course, so many covers of Amazing Grace. Like all of you, I've been thinking of some of my favorite memories of Dr. P. In 2009, we had a big retirement celebration for him here in Lexington. And for a year, I spent getting video messages and organizing music playlists, working closely with other friends to make the event memorable, getting newspaper clippings. And in 2009, right before I went, my daughter was 8 at the time, getting ready to go to school. And I remember having a conversation with her about the celebration. And she had seen me work and talk to all sorts of people and get things organized. And she goes, "Dad, who is Dr. Patterson?" And I said, "Well, Maddie, who do you think he is?" And she thought about it for a second and said, "Is he a rock star?" And I said, "Yes, Maddie, he is." So from my daughter to his daughter, Elizabeth Patterson, I'll say a few words.
Hello, I'm Elizabeth, Lizzie, and thanks to Marie the Lizard. She nicknamed me sometime in the 70s. I just first want to say welcome to everybody. It is so unbelievable to have you here, and I'm so deeply appreciative of your presence and your being with us to celebrate my dad. He believed in celebrations of life, and so we really want that to be this for him. It's wonderful to me that we get to be here too. We wanted to have a service earlier, but Spindletop is closed in the month of January, and this is such a special place for him that we waited, and I feel like it's perfect. I don't know how many events he hosted here, dozens and dozens. I can't even count. I feel like I grew up in this place. The first one was before me, and I've just seen pictures of it, and it actually was right here in the Oak Room, or that's where their big dinner was. He hosted the University of Kentucky Centennial Celebration in 1965, and the photos are all black and white. They look like straight out of Mad Men. Everyone's men are in tuxes, and women are in white gloves, and everybody's smoking, and so it's really special to be here. So the last 5-6 weeks have been a little surreal for me. I wasn't going to share this, but I'm a little foggy and fuzzy. So it's really, I don't know. I've asked the universe why, but then sort of an irony came about. But just to share with you, my mother, who's 92, actually passed away this past Wednesday. And so I knew I would get that reaction. So I'm just kind of, I guess, in more of a daze than anything. So excuse me if I seem like I am, because I am. But I was thinking since then, sort of the irony of it. because I'm an only child, and I didn't like being an only child. I always wanted a sibling because there was just this. I always felt like the spotlight was on me, and they both had this common trait of just this hyper focus on me, which was wonderful. It was, how much they loved me, but it was also, when it's your grades and your behavior and your social life and everything you do, it's overwhelming at times. My parents had some commonalities. Is it not? Oh, okay. They had some commonalities. They both loved to entertain. They both loved their homes. They loved plants. They prioritized education. They had definitely similar political ideologies, but there the commonalities ended. My dad was not, I would just describe him as unconventional when it came to parenting. And my mother was way more on the conventional side. I sort of grew up, when you're a kid, things are the way they are when you're little. You don't think about it. It is. And so I didn't think about it, but it was like almost going to different countries when I would go from one house to the other. They operated differently. There were different expectations, and but that's what it is. You get used to it. I grew up with my dad in the world of debate, and as crazy as that world is in some ways, it was wonderful for me, and it ended up having just a tremendous influence on my life. But when I was young, to me, debaters, everyone was way taller than me. They, all the men had, not all the men, many of them, males, had super long hair. They talked really fast. They were very loud, and they gasped a lot in their speeches. And I never got that. When I got older, I did. But I've often joked to myself that if there was an award for the non-debater that received an award for having attended the most debate tournaments, I would receive that award. I feel like I've traveled all over to debate tournaments. But what else do you know? Back to my dad being unconventional, one of the ways in which that was the case was in many ways our roles were reversed a lot of the time. And I was nagging him to turn down his music throughout my life. Actually, the Friday night before he went into the hospital, Jay and Dion, and we couldn't talk. We couldn't hear each other. Turn down the music. Dinner was way too late, and I was nagging him about wanting to eat, and no, dinner's not cheese and crackers. We need something more nutritional. I spent hours, as all debaters and many SGA people in here know, searching for glasses and keys in the briefcase, and combing, as he used to say. We need to comb the place. And I can't even think how many hours I spent, as I know a lot of people here have. I distinctly remember it got to be sort of a habit. Linda Barker in my dad's office my dad would just disappear. He would just go somewhere. And he wouldn't be home, and I'd call, and I'd call, and I'd call Linda. Linda, where is he? I don't know. But I'll find out for you as soon as I know he'll call in as soon as he calls. So it's like, don't go out of town without telling me. It was another one of those. But at some point, I don't remember exactly when, I began to notice that, things were a little bit different in my house than my friends. And one of the times that I distinctly remember is when I was in first or second grade. I was waiting in car line, and there was, of course, a sea of station wagons, and up pulls this, what seemed to me, this gigantic Kentucky State van, and packed with people. I think there were 3 teams in it, and there was music on, and everybody was talking, and everyone's kind of looking at me like, who's getting in that? And I realized this is not the norm. We were headed for spring break. Yeah, that was my spring break. We were headed to Novice Nationals. And, as soon as we got on the highway, my dad, of course, had the mixtape ready for Novice Nationals, and all the way to Evanston, we're listening, and he gets mad if you talk, over the music, and so that's just kind of, I guess, the way it was. There were a lot of things that over time I didn't understand. I didn't understand comparative tapes. Why am I stuck in a van for 7 hours on the way to Evanston, and I'm listening to 38 versions of Amazing Grace. I didn't get that, and frankly, I was with the debaters. I was complaining the entire time. Why the music always have to be so loud you couldn't hear someone talk? Why do we go to Charlie Brown's every Friday night? Who goes to Charlie Brown's Friday night? But the thing that I came to realize over time about my dad, and really it wasn't until I got to be an adult looking back and had children, he was a single dad, and he was a professor, and he was a debate coach, and he was SGA, student government advisor. So he played all these different roles, and I couldn't have done that. I couldn't have done it. It was tough, but he made it work. It was unconventional, but he made it work. So I feel like a post that I did for his 90th birthday, I think it was on Facebook, kind of best encapsulates, since my mind is kind of foggy, and I thought I would read it. Last Saturday night, we celebrated a person who I'm deeply grateful to call my father. People from all over the country gathered to honor him as he soon turns 90 years old. With the exception of mobility occasionally getting in the way, he's the same charismatic, brilliant, intriguing, and yes, eccentric person he has always been. I was about 15 before I realized that my dad was somewhat different from many others. It never occurred to me that framing day-to-day life in a continuum of Bob Dylan lyrics was anything out of the ordinary. Doesn't every dad own a vinyl collection larger than most retail stores from the 70s and burn 8 to 10 candles every night, eat dinner at midnight, keep their Christmas lights up year-round, and entertain 4 to 5 nights a week? I guess it shouldn't come as a surprise that while I'm going through the laborious process of registering him at the ER at 11 p.m. one night last fall, blood pressure spiking through the roof, I turn around, and this is dead true, I turn around to find him posting his latest music trivia question on Facebook. Less than 24 hours, as I'm still recovering from the 3 hours of sleep we got, I get a call from Drake's Bar. Lizzie, just checking in to see how you're doing tonight. You want to get together? No, really? Yes, he is as eccentric as hell, but the truth is not every teacher has a student and his wife from the 1950s who drive 24 hours in one weekend just to be with him in person on his 90th birthday. And that was Frederick Dorward and his wife from Tulsa, who was, I think, one of his first students back in the 50s. Over the years, my dad has befriended students in their teens all the way to adults in their late 90s, people from all walks of life, from all parts of the world, every race, religion, and ethnicity. from those on the extreme left to those on the extreme right. He found the right profession. People are his passion. He's energized by talking to them, learning about them, and instructing them. He celebrates their gifts and reserves judgment unlike anyone I've ever known. For any student who's willing to work, he will go more than the distance. It was a bitter pill to swallow when I got out into the real world and realized that not everyone was as tolerant. Admittedly, one's patience can wear a bit thin as you're listening to the 34th rendition of Amazing Grace, with once again reliving the love affair between Graham Parsons and Amy Lou. Particularly when you've been waiting for dinner for 6 hours and all you've had is a carrot. In fact, I've many times wondered if I could walk on foot to Boulder to Birmingham, from Boulder to Birmingham, faster than he could serve dinner. I shudder to think what the total would be if one were to calculate the number of hours every relative, friend, colleague, and student had spent voluntarily searching for the keys, the glasses, and the briefcase. We all ask ourselves why we routinely attempt to converse and strain to hear each other over Mick blaring at top volume. And we all know the answer. Time and time again, my dad is always there for the people he loves, whether a family member, friend, student, neighbor, employee, or colleague. When you need him, he is steadfast. When it really counts, his habit is quiet and without fanfare, but unflinching. To be close to my dad is to know what it feels like to cherish and to be cherished. That's what last Saturday night was really all about. And to me, that's what today is all about. I've received so many wonderful calls and texts and emails and read so many beautiful tributes online. And it struck me, I wasn't really aware. I realized as a child and really on through my 20s, just what he did in his field of debate. And these past weeks, it's struck me all over again. It really hit me in his retirement that Cy planned for him, all the tributes. But I guess I just wasn't aware of the influence, that he's had on people, both personally and professionally, and the impact that he's had in the field. He definitely left a big legacy in the world of debate, and with the University of Kentucky debate program and the Tournament of Champions in particular. But for me, he taught me not only the importance of relationships, but the power of relationships. For me, I got to watch him build multiple circles of friends and watch the way he brought together and built community. And to me, that's his legacy. He truly gravitated to such a stellar group of people, brilliant minds, creative minds, some big personalities, and truly some of the most authentic and generous people I've ever known. And I feel like all of you here today are a testament to that. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you.
Hello everyone, thank you all for being here. I prepared something small I'd like to say about my grandfather. I know that 50 years of debate and friendship, everyone here has a lot to say, so we'll make it quick. Words cannot describe the impact my grandfather has had on my life. To all of you, W was a friend, a coach, and a mentor. To me, W was my grandfather. He was the rock of our family, and it breaks my heart knowing that a piece of our family is gone. Today is a sad day, but it is also a day of celebration. A celebration of the life of my grandfather, Dr. J.W. Patterson, his accomplishments, and his friends. It fills me with joy looking out into this crowd and seeing the profound impact that J.W. has had on so many of your lives. My grandfather loved life, and he loved people. And as I got older, I started to appreciate that more, his excitement for connecting with people, helping people pursue the best versions of themselves, his love for music, his appetite for reading, and his taste for bourbon. And I think now is an appropriate time to officially forgive you, Debbie, for buying me books for every birthday. I never thought that I would be sad that I no longer have to have a fire in your backyard when it's 97 degrees. But I will miss it. Debbie, I love you, and I will carry the skills, knowledge, and love you gave me for the rest of my life.
Hello everyone, so I'm Zachary Coons, worst twin and also JW's grandson. So I also, a few things I want to say specifically from the frame of his grandchild growing up around someone that created such a legacy in the debate community and then also among so many of you all. So to start, I'll say growing up with him, everyone talked about sort of his like intellectual capacity, and I think I saw that sort of manifest in many different ways. But one of the most impactful to me was one particular, I believe it was a birthday dinner, and I think we were 12 years old, and we sat down, and my grandfather started playing Drake and Lil Wayne songs. It was incredible. I'd never seen someone above like the age of even 30 like rap, much less someone that was almost in their 90s. It was phenomenal. Okay, sure. Thank you. Anyhow, and so anyways, another thing I wanted to say is throughout my time growing up, we obviously attended the TOC many times and got to see how cool it was, especially as a child, just seeing my grandfather surrounded by all these people who wanted to meet him. You know, it was a very cool feeling. But it was also hard to understand exactly why. And so as I got older, I did start to understand. But I think specifically what really made a huge impact was when I got to college. And I would meet people when I would wear like a TOC shirt or any sort of merchandise, and they would know what that is. Be like, hey, like I went to the TOC. Like, how do you know about it? Say, well, my grandfather's J.W. Patterson. I smiled. Including one of my best friends I met in Richmond, who I'm actually going to live with in Dallas, Luke Wheatley. He did speech. And randomly one day, I was just wearing a TOC shirt, and he was like, no way. Like, you mentioned your grandfather was in the debate. What do you mean by that? So, you know, I bring that up to say, like, it blew my mind to realize, like, this impact is really just not this room. And, you know, people say that, but just seeing that, meeting random people that just know him, it's incredible. So I just wanted to say thank you all for coming again. I appreciate it, and I will always love him.
Glad that we got the mic going finally. I am Emmett Coons. I'm the youngest of all these kids. W was one of a kind. He loved life. He loved people, and he lived his life with no restrictions. He loved unconditionally. Most people in this world need or want something from you. He did it. There's something to be said about a man whose worst trait was he wanted to be around you. He needed to be around. I mean, every night, he would call us to come over. I mean, and many of you can relate to this. But he truly just wanted to be around people. He loved people. He was, well, he loved to party. He loved to there wasn't a room that W was in that he wasn't comfortable. He could talk to anyone. Anyone. I mean, there are countless times that he ran into one of my friends randomly, and then he just randomly met them. There's times in which people that he didn't even know ended up at his house. W encouraged me to get into debate. But going in, I didn't understand the value. I thought it was about learning a bunch of foreign policy, a bunch of random things. No, that's not what makes debate valuable. What made debate valuable is understanding, truly understanding. It makes you think, it makes you question. So because of this, Debbie tried to accumulate as much knowledge as he could. You wouldn't imagine how many books he had, how many records he had. I mean, Mom, you can testify to that. He accumulated this knowledge just as he accumulated books, candles, firewood. Lots of fires. What's most important and most impressive is how he gathered friends. And the reason why he was beloved has become apparent to me within the last couple of weeks. It's clear and evident to me now. He was beloved because he listened, because he truly listened to you. He wanted to understand who you are. He made you feel like the most important person in a room, because he actually cared what you were saying. Most people just want to talk and talk and talk. No, he loved to listen to people. He taught me this single-handedly, and this is the most valuable lesson I've ever learned. It is to listen, to hear people, to truly try to understand them, because it's a trait that most of us don't have, and I would hope that debate carries that on, and I would hope Debbie's life carries that trait on. All right, well, thank you.
Thanks, boys. You know, Elizabeth, we owe you all a debt of gratitude for sharing your dad with us. We know that time with us may meant less time with you, but thank you for sharing your dad. You may not have any natural siblings, but you have lots of brothers and sisters. And Patterson, Dr. P's brother, just
Thank you, Si. Elizabeth has asked me to, on behalf of the family, to present some information about our family and share some stories about our time spent with JW through the years. Hopefully this will also provide some insight to his love for academics and a lifetime of continual learning. So first, the family. There were a total of 7 siblings in our family. There were 5 boys and 2 girls. JW was the 3rd child. I was the 7th child. And our brother Daryl, who is here today, was the 6th child. So at this point, Daryl and I are the only 2 still living. All 7 of us grew up in a small town in east central Oklahoma named Stillwell. Stillwell is nestled in the foothills of the Ozark Mountains and is only a few miles from the Arkansas border. And if you were to Google Stillwell, I'm sure you will find that it claims to be the strawberry capital of the world, complete with an annual strawberry festival parade every year since 1948. At the time of JW's birth, our family lived in the Horn community, which was one of the rural areas of Stillwell, and there are many. It was in this community that JW completed his grade school and junior high years at a 2-room school located a few miles from our home. He graduated high school in town at Stillwell High School. JW developed an interest in academics early in his life. Current events were always important to him. As a young boy, he sold a paper named the Grit newspaper. Some of you may have seen that from time to time, which was published weekly in Williamsport, Pennsylvania. It targeted small towns and rural families in the United States. His paper route consisted of families who lived within several miles of our home. He recruited his younger sister, Betty, to help him make the deliveries. This paper helped him keep current on world events and supported his academic interests. His access to current events was greatly enhanced when our family purchased a radio sometime in the 1930s. And for the first time, the world was coming to him on a daily basis with news, entertainment, and music. I've heard him say many times that the invention of the radio meant more to him than the invention of television. As you can tell from reading his obituary, his interest in academics continued all of his life, earning both a master's degree and a doctoral degree, obviously serving as the director of debate at the University of Kentucky here in Lexington allowed him to continue development of his academic interest and impart his knowledge to many students through the years, which I'm sure many of you can attest to. His academic achievement set a high standard for his family, and specifically for me personally. I wanted to read you a portion of a note that he inserted in the American College Dictionary. He sent to me in 1960. I was in the 8th grade, getting ready to enter high school, and he wrote, "Sam, I hope that you have begun to think of your educational goals. Set a high goal and then work toward it. Don't settle for anything less than a sound education. Always study more than the teacher asks of you. Keep up with current affairs. Read widely of history, travel, and fiction works, and plan homework for each evening. Above all, learn to write and speak the language correctly. Your brother, J.W." I think it is obvious from his success that the advice he gave to me is what he followed. And I might add that his advice was very helpful to me as I continued my own academic development. You know, I wonder how many times through the years J.W. was asked what name went with those initials. Here is what our mother told us. It was very common at the time J.W. was born for the local physician to come to families' homes to deliver babies. After J.W. was born, the doctor was required to complete and file a birth certificate. Apparently, our parents had not completely agreed on his name, so they told the doctor to put down J.W., and they would get back to him with the name to include on the certificate. Apparently, there was a miscommunication since the doctor submitted the birth certificate to the Department of Health in Oklahoma City with the name J.W. Patterson on the certificate. Mother explained that it was their intent to submit a corrected birth certificate with the name Jethro Wallace Patterson. Jethro Wallace was our mother's father's name, and he was a Methodist minister, by the way. The only thing we can conclude is that due to the demands of life and maybe an oversight, the corrected birth certificate was never issued. So J.W. was his official name. Now, I have a humorous story J.W. shared with us related to his initials with no associated name. He said that one time when he applied for life insurance, he completed the application with his name J.W. Patterson. The insurance company returned the application stating they had to have his full name, not just his initials. Well, in an effort to explain to the company that his name was J.W., he redid the application, and for his name he wrote J period and in parentheses only, and W period in parentheses only, Patterson. Well, when the company issued the policy, they stated his name was Jomley Womley Patterson. Needless to say, he gave up on that company. All right, as the boys and Liz has said, if you can't talk or discuss J.W.'s life without discussing how much he loved music of all times. And many of you know you would not be in his home very long without listening to music or at least discussing it. How many of us have sat on his patio around the fire pit listening to music? Sometimes, maybe most of the time, the volume of the music required us to raise our voices in order to carry on the conversation. Now, regarding his patio, he took a lot of pride in his plants, all of which were beautiful he recently told us that one of the plants was 30 years old. Also, and I was just wondering if any of you noticed, he seemed to have an endless supply of firewood, either in the garage or along the entry between the garage and the door into the house. So with the exception of maybe a few times due to wet weather, we always sat around the fire pit in the evening regardless of temperature. I want to share a story that illustrates his love for music. In 1978, our family arranged for a family reunion in Hot Springs, Arkansas. J.W. came up with the idea of preparing a Patterson family hit parade. He requested each of us, including nephews and nieces, to send him our favorite song at the time. He prepared a cassette tape, with each of our songs, complete with a short introduction of each family member before recording each song. I understood that he was able to access the university sound studio to make the cassette. As was typical of JW, it was done very professionally, and each introduction was appropriate for each family member. We set aside about 3 hours during the reunion to listen to the hymn record. And it was done very well. After recently listening to this recording, I've concluded that had he not been so effective as a professor, he would have been a very successful radio disc jockey. Well, after JW's retirements and mine and Daryl's retirements, we all had time to visit more frequently. My wife, Sherry, and I had the privilege of coming to Lexington once or twice a year for the last 10 years or so. Each time we came, he had different places for us to go. We had lunch or dinner at a number of different locations, including Shaker Village, Irish Acres, Joseph S. Bookstore, here at Spindletop, Drake's Bar and Grill, several of Ouita's restaurants, and breakfast at Keeneland Racetrack. And of course, as already been mentioned, the place we went during almost every visit was Charlie Brown's, where JW had his favorite couch. I'm guessing many of you have been to Charlie Brown's with him and sat on that couch. Also, during these visits, we enjoyed driving through Lexington's beautiful horse farms, crossing the Kentucky River on the ferry, touring the Toyota plant, driving through the Red River Gorge, walking through Henry Clay's estate, visiting the Kentucky Horse Farm, and seeing the birthplace of Kentucky Fried Chicken in Corbin, Kentucky. And to say the least, we will miss getting to continue those visits and just sitting around the fire pit or his living room, discussing current events, religion, politics, and reminiscing about life in Stillwell. Oh, and finally, I think we would all agree that living to age 95 exceeds what most people experience. We thank God that JW was with us that many years, and also thankful for the most part that he enjoyed a good quality of life. However, for those of us who knew him well and were close to him, 95 years was not enough. So now we hang on to many precious memories of time spent with JW. And I want to close my thoughts on the time spent with him by referring to the song made famous by Bob Hope, Frank Sinatra, and others. Thanks for the memories.
So Ouita is going to come up and speak. She is a former UK invader and brought Kentucky its first NAT champion.
Sam, for years, honestly, we called him Johnny Lovely. I didn't know that really came from him. There have been so many memories playing in my mind's eye the last few weeks, and I know that's true for everyone here. But the condominium that he has resided in for the last few years actually was the newest house. My memories are really of the old bent tree condominium and its patio. And I can see the living room extremely well and the music closet and JW buried up to this. But in the music closet looking for things. And I was typically trying to get some kind of dinner together in the kitchen, in the little kitchen. And I just want to say, Elizabeth, one of the things I remember the most about both places was the painting of you as a little girl. And the ceramic poodle. I can't remember her name. Was it Cindy or Candy? Oh, Candy. Okay. But that painting of you, Elizabeth, it was always there to comfort your dad. And because often you were absent, you were either at your mom's or you were at school, and he was with you no matter where you were. He was your confidant, your cheerleader, your devoted father, every minute of your life from your first minute. He loved you best, he loved you most, and he cherished you. And I was so happy that you said that in your remarks because it was so true. He cherished you, and although he's gone, I know he's with you. And Worth, Zach, and Emmett, the joy you brought to your grandfather changed his life. And it changed him. He found his true legacy in you and in his love for you. I don't think he ever thought he'd have 3 amazing grandsons. And I always thought of that show, My 3 Sons, when I thought about the 3 of you and JW together. For the rest of us, he was a family member, a mentor, a friend, a confidant, educator, coach, professor, and he impacted all of our lives in so many ways, as you've all so eloquently already said. I met Dr. J.W. Patterson just before my 18th birthday, when my mother marched me up to the 10th floor of the Patterson office tower, which I thought was named for him, and told him that I wanted to join the debate team. And that day, one of my biggest adventures of my life began. I found friends at UK and across the country. I found my voice, my competitive spirit, and even expressed my love of cooking and found restaurant culture through debate, late night dinner parties, debate team dinner parties, and through traveling the country to debate tournaments, where Dr. Patterson indulged me, as did Roger, in eating in all kinds of different restaurants, Greek, Indian, Syrian, all kinds of restaurants. We were bumping across the interstate in a 12-passenger van, and always there was music. And people ask me all the time, how did you become a chef? And I said, by going to debate tournaments. I fell in love with restaurant culture. But Dr. P was utterly himself in every situation, confident in the face of chaos or adversity. And I slowly learned what constituted an argument, how to dance at the Harley Hotel, and what hypothesis testing was, how to write a counterplan, how to water the office plants correctly. And I have to tell you, for a long time, he irritated us so madly with those plants, we tried to kill it with the ditto fluid. The ditto fluid on the plants in hopes that they would die and the damn things thrive. And we learned how to enjoy midnight suppers. Elizabeth was right, we were starving. The time we ever got to eat. And how to endure the old Run for the Roses party that lasted into the wee hours of the morning at the Carnahan house. In my career, there were lots of losses initially, like completely defeated tournaments where we didn't win a debate. But never one time in 4 years of debate and debating for Dr. Patterson did he ever criticize my performance. Not once. He may have played You Can't Always Get What You Want a few times. That was always the worst, losing and then having to listen to the song. But he allowed me the space to come along as I could. And our successes grew. And my senior year in the run-up to the national debate tournament, he played I Am Woman, Hear Me Roar. That's such a corny song. But he played it over and over again. And for a young woman in 1986, that really meant a lot. It was his way of encouraging me not to back down. And it's been a song I've heard in my head many times, sometimes to my chagrin. Coming in when in need of confidence or a bit of courage. He was right about so many things. especially that those were the good old days that we were living, which he always loved to say while sitting in the front seat of the van, bourbon bag in between the two. These are the good old days. And he was right. After 42 years, if I close my eyes, I can see the old debate office and hear Willie playing On the Road Again. I can see his smile so clearly and hear his booming voice over the tape player, or in the van, or at the TOC, or announcing the results at the round robin, painfully reading every ballot, which when you went 1-7 was really painful. He was my friend and my supporter for 42 years, loyal to a fault. And he had that special characteristic of endurance in relationship. He withheld judgment, and he didn't stop loving you even when you were really pissed off at him. He just let time handle those emotions because he knew you'd come back around. And it's a lesson I've never forgotten in my life. I'm so lucky I got to spend some time with him recently, listening to music, sipping a little Four Roses small batch out on the patio. Time stood still just for a few precious hours. And I'm just going to do this for him. I can do it. May the circle be unbroken by and by, Lord, by and by. There's a better home awaiting in the sky, Lord, in the sky.
We're going to bring up the current director debate, David Arnett, talk about filling some big shoes.
I met JW when I was 17 as a commuter at the Kentucky debate camp. It was the first and only real debate camp I attended, and it fundamentally changed my life. While it's a bit fuzzy, some things stand out. The dozens of high school students that were packed inside Charlie Brown's for an all-camp lunch. The awkward Saturday night dances, the strange CD auctions that were often part of the morning announcements. But what I remember most was the experience of being surrounded by talented debaters from around the country, my incredible instructors that helped open my eyes to what debate could be. There are a few fork-in-the-road moments in life, and I think this was certainly an important one for me. And it wouldn't have been possible without JW offering me a scholarship to attend, something he did for countless numbers of students over decades. My next experience with JW was as recruit and then freshman on the UK debate team. Again, JW was there, scholarship in hand, to make both debate and, for that matter, college a possibility. I was not a great high school student. My family didn't have money. The combination created a very narrow path, one that J.W. Patterson was responsible for helping me find. Like debate camp, my memories are a bit fuzzy. The Harvard trip with what seemed like 24 hours of Amazing Grace covers, mandatory parties, poor Linda having to start every day by calling the debaters who hadn't shown up for office hours. But importantly, what I remember most was the crash course introduction to the intensity of college debate, the friendships I would make. The good times, the bad times, the surreal times were all part of this introduction and set me on the path that I never left. For 10 years, JW and I were peers, directing our two programs, and it was always a highlight to bring my team home to Lexington, especially the round robin. Except for that 1 year, it screwed us. Round robins were the stuff of legends, from the all-night Run for the Roses ceremonies to hot browns in this room at Spindletop. JW, for better or worse, was going to give you something to talk about and remember. My teams lost in the final round of the college tournament 3 years in a row, and JW had this sadistic process of delaying the announcement of the results until he could bring everyone back to the Lexington suite, fix a drink, and then have the judges announce and explain their decision one by painful one. But I also remember being welcomed back to the speakeasy to escape the pressures of competition for at least a drink or two and catch up with the man who had been an important part of my debate life for so many years. My last chapter with JW was back home in Lexington as coach and director, where I've been the past 14 years. And over those 14 years, we visited hundreds of times, and for most of them, they had this stylized ritual to it all. You knock at the door, JW lets you in, tells you to go fix a drink. I'd sneak over to the stereo, turn down the music a little, and we'd meet on the patio where we gossip about the debate world, politics, music, whatever. He was always supportive and interested in how the team was doing, even if he mixed up a name or two on occasion. There was rarely any food. My last visit was in December, and it was the same as always. Luckily, we had one of those strange December warm days. We got to sit on the patio. We caught up on things, and we worked on planning the next occasion like we've done so many times before. Dr. Patterson was the director of debate at Kentucky in 4 decades, and in each of those decades, he coached the top 10 partnership. Not too bad. He coached an NDT champion, a runner-up, a Copeland Award winner, several runner-ups. He coached 6 NDT top speakers, more than anyone in history. He was a tenured professor in the College of Communication. He literally wrote the book on debate with his 1983 publication, Contemporary Debate. He created an infrastructure of high school and college debate tournaments whose impact on the modern-day national circuit cannot be exaggerated. When he started with the TOC, the Run for the Roses, the College Invitational, which now has his name, the Ohio Valley now sees an opener for high school, last year collectively hosted around 8,000 people from across the country and the world. But ultimately, how I remember JW is for what he taught me about prioritizing people and friendships in our everyday lives. He was never too busy to visit. He'd be happy folks came together today. And if he were here, he'd no doubt insist on calling on every single person in the room to give a speech. So many of my closest friends have something to do with JW in one way or another. And in recent years, many of our discussions emphasize the value of friendship and the importance of putting in time and effort to respect those relationships that mean so much to us. And for as long as I knew him, JW understood this better than anyone. His home was a revolving door of friends and acquaintances he built up over a lifetime. Sharing conversation over a drink with music in the background was really what he lived for. He was my mentor, my friend. He was a legend. Truly a life well lived. Thank you.
Dr. Tim Hynes, former director of the University of Louisville and Federal Program.
Does this do something? It comes as no surprise that I make references to music over the next couple of minutes. A joint song by Willie Nelson and Johnny Cash reflected a long-held belief by J.W. Patterson. Every song tells a story. I heard J.W. say on a number of occasions that somewhere, every day, someone is playing Blue Eyes Crying in the Rain. He was a facilitator of conversations, some with him, more with people who would be gathered with him, oftentimes people having conversations about him, even when he was in the room. I first met J.W. Patterson when I was a graduate student at the University of North Carolina in 1972, not that long after he had come to Kentucky and had begun, depending on counts, second, third, or fourth career. It was J.W. Who sat with me in the Orrington Hotel. It should come as no surprise, bourbon was required. And said that the people at Louisville were really serious about a debate program, and you might think about applying. That had a pretty profound effect on my life. And so there are 50 years of possible stories. I want to talk only about three things. The first is a debate story. And ironically, the debate story includes a reference to Tom Goodnight, formerly at Northwestern, and a Northwestern tournament in which teams from the University of Louisville and the University of Kentucky lost in the semifinal round. But Goodnight was pressed with dinner reservations, so he skirted the judges and the teams in the final round off, without any recognition of the teams who had lost in the semifinal round. Professor Patterson decided that a ceremony was required. And so after the folks from Louisville and Kentucky bestowed upon third place trophies, Professor Patterson had the idea that the first and second place trophies belonged in Dr. Patterson's suite in the Orrington, in which he left a note to Professor Goodnight saying, "Call this number if you want your trophies back." Much groveling happened after Goodnight sent debaters off to find the trophies and could only find the hostage note. An hour later, with a good deal of groveling involved and much laughter from the semifinalists, Professor Goodnight recognized the third place winners, and got his trophies back. First story. The second is personal. JW, quite frankly, not only influenced my application to Louisville, but began a friendship that extended nearly 50 years. Was he idiosyncratic? Of course not. It was his way. He would allow others to have their ways. But there was always, I think, as several individuals have said, there was always a time to come home and be with JW. And finally, a perspective that I think many of us have seen, and it again comes from a lyric, part of a lyric from Willie Nelson, who lamented that it's horrible when you find out that for some people, acting like having fun is some kind of crime. And JW was not, one of the few things he was unforgiving about was the notion that people couldn't understand, that having fun was the essence of one's existence. Now, whether that was him hosting the National Debate Tournament in 1996 and having, I like to say in administratese, frank and open discussions with the NDT board and with the NDT trustees, that if they were not going to understand that having fun was not a crime, then he was just going to ask them all to leave. Whether it was creating the Kentucky Round Robin at the Carnahan House, in which probably one of the greatest notions of his acceptance was claiming that the winning of the round robin was drinking the sweetest julep of all. And that's with clear knowledge that Dr. Patterson believed that a julep was a sin. That it was the complete and utter disgraceful destruction of fine bourbon. We cherish our friend. This is way harder than I thought. We cherish our memories, even as we miss it. We are honored to have been his friend. At least I am honored to have been his friend. And with words from Willie Nelson. Someday when we meet all yonder, we'll stroll hand in hand again. And in the land that knows no parting, blue eyes cry. I was asked by Lucy Keel to read a few words, and asking those of you who know Dr. Keel, asking doesn't quite get it. My ability to communicate with Lucy Keel, longtime director of forensics at Cal State Fullerton, and a friend again for more than 50 years, asked. I edited fairly massively, but I want it to be said, Elizabeth, and you must share, that I did read at least a significant part of her letter, because I would like to talk with her again. Quote, JW was so much more than a coach. I know firsthand that he has been a rock for his beloved Elizabeth and his 3 grandsons. He's been a constant and devoted friend, certainly to me when I needed someone the most. JW was one of a kind. If I had a nickel for every time he said, Lucy, where are my keys, briefcase, glasses, I would be very rich. During our first brunch in Boston, he became concerned that he could not find his glasses. I gently told him they were on his head. I love you, JW, and you will be in my thoughts and my heart for as long as I live. At times, he drove me crazy, but I always knew that the other side, it was extraordinary. My life has been enriched by knowing him. I don't drink bourbon, but I bought a tiny bottle. Hopefully, I don't know, Maker's Mark. And will lovingly think of you as I drink it today. Thank you for the miracles. Lucy.
All our sins and griefs to bear. What a privilege to carry everything to God in prayer. Oh, what peace we often forfeit. Oh, what needless pain we bear. All because we do not carry everything to God in prayer. Are we weak and heavy laden? Covered with a load of care. Precious Savior, still our refuge. Take it to the Lord in prayer. Do thy friends despise, forsake thee? Take it to the Lord in prayer. In his arms we'll take and shield thee. Thou wilt find a solace there. In his arms he'll take and shield thee. Thou wilt find a solace there.
We're going to bring up Gil Skillman, former UK debater and current chairman of the J.W. Patterson Foundation.
When I first heard of JW's passing, I was atypically at a loss for words. Part of it was, even though intellectually I knew that we all go sometime, in our hearts we had gotten used to the idea that he was just going to pull through indefinitely. It was like, we have another bourbon with him. But the other part was, I really found myself in a dilemma. I could either, because I really wanted to say something after Dave's very eloquent tribute that he posted on the debate forum. And when I looked for words, the words were either true, but especially now that you've heard them so many times, sounded cliched and repetitive. You changed my life. Well, of course he did, fundamentally, but so many people in this room could say it. Or I could say a million things. And then, drown everybody in words. And in fact, I feel like I could do a round robin sort of thing, association thing right now, where I could shout out a phrase and somebody would stand up and say, give you a story about what just happened, you know, like fire pit smoke in your face, you know, or candles, or running from a hurricane, John. But I won't. So this is going to seem fairly idiosyncratic because I'm pulling pieces together to describe something. Part of my problem, if a problem is what it is, really a privilege, is that I was in a position to have a relationship with JW in several different dimensions. Of course, I debated for him, which was transformative. I was his assistant coach for a year, which was memorable. I became also an academic. And that was incredibly eye-opening, and I hope to give you an example of that I realized what decisions he made in his life that from the standpoint of the standard academic track are just mind-boggling. And finally, I related to him fundamentally through music. I played music. We made it a routine. Every time I came to town, share our latest finds. Oh, you hear this one, blah, blah, blah. Oh, I've got to get that CD. Yeah, sorry, still CDs. Just, you know, what are you listening to now? He came up and listened to my band play up in Connecticut. Explaining this to my bandmates was kind of a trip. Wait, you're saying your old debate coach from undergraduate days is coming up to hear us? Wait, you're saying he's flying up from Kentucky to hear us? Okay, but then they got him and they all got it, you know. Once he talked to them and shared his evident love of music. So, what do I want to say about his story? I want to basically say three things. One, I promised that I would tell you how mind-boggling his career was from the standpoint of an academic. You know, probably, if you've read the obituaries, that when he left, got his undergraduate degree, he went off and taught high school for 9 years. Well, that's fine. We all do that. You know, so several people do that out of college. He also he was the director of the forensics and debate program. Okay, that's interesting. He didn't do debate or forensics when he was in high school, so he's coming at this de novo. All right. He was nationally level competitive with that program almost immediately. Whoa. He ran the national tournament in 1956, 6 years into his appointment. Dude. Oh, and by the way, at the same time, ending in 1957, he was pursuing his master's degree 900 miles to the northeast in Ann Arbor at the University of Michigan. I don't even see how that's possible. Right? I got a master's at the University of Michigan, and darn it, I certainly wasn't off 900 miles to the southwest, running a tournament or coaching a national level program. Astounding. Now, 1960, he gets his PhD. He comes to the University of Kentucky. Here we are. 5 years in. So he must have been an untenured professor, or at best, freshly tenured. The president says, hey, would you take a year off to run our centennial celebration for the University of Kentucky? This is mind-boggling. This is like asking a freshman in high school halfway through their freshman year, hey, could you run our graduation ceremonies? Which, of course, he did with panache, because one of JW's absolute life lessons, if you're going to do something, do it fast.
Yes.
Yeah, yes, sir. Carnahan, House, Spindletop, all part of that brain. But it didn't stop there. The reason he went to the University of Kentucky, as he professed to several of us, it was the best offer he could get where they didn't ask him to be the director of debate. Fine. 6 years after running the centennial, debaters come to him and beseech him to run the debate program at the University of Kentucky, 1971. As you know, of course, he accepted it. Did he do this begrudgingly, out of a dour sense of duty? Oh no. If you know JW, you know that's not true. And you've heard the details, I don't need to rehearse them, right? The life-changing debate tournament for high school tournaments, the Tournament of Champs that now happily bears his name, right? The award-winning program that started. And let me say that standing up here, I feel like I'm just a link in a chain for my fellow debaters that are here, ones that follow me, and the ones that can't be here, including in particular Jim Fleet, who was part of his first nationally competitive team almost immediately after he became coach. So he went on and did, as you know, an astounding job. Right? But the point I want to make is just how mind-boggling this decision was. He was going to be a scholar. His intention was to be the standard, you research, you write books, you write articles, and that's it. So when he was asked to take over the debate tournament, or the debate program, it took him from this career fundamentally to an alternative career. But look at what he did with it. Just astounding. So once I became an academic, I came to appreciate his contributions even more. And of course, there are certain parts of his legacy that I carry around, as my wife can attest. Lost keys, lost glasses, briefcases left in the middle of rooms somewhere that I have to go back at a lickety-split an hour away in order to do. I'm proud to carry on that aspect of the academic professor. But why? What was it? I'm going to step out. The bike isn't doing a darn thing anyway. What was it? I mean, the other part that bothers me, he was still doing this. Sure, he quit being director of debate in 2008, right? And he retired 2 years later. But he was still actively going to tournaments up to like around the age of 90. Like, who does that in their 80s and 90s? And it's just overwhelming, a force of nature, a force of humanity. Now, let me go back to the millions of things I thought about when I first heard of his passing. One of them, and it didn't make sense to me at the time, was a picture in the building where I work of an old political scientist, Elmer Schatzschneider. And I said, well, why am I remembering him? He doesn't look like JW. Right? But I remembered a passage from his work that he had that said, to put it very bluntly, democracy is about the love of people. And it's like, well, democracy. No, substitute the word debate. Debate is ultimately, especially at the level that JW pursued it, is about the love of people. Now, wait a minute, you say. He was a competitive debate coach. He wanted his teams to win, yes? Right. But he also, and you've heard some of this from Ouita and from the others, he also just loved the activity and the personal involvement with each other that debate necessitated. Listen to each other, right? And engage with each other. That's what made him excited and motivated all his work, right? I said, okay, thank you, Professor Schatzschneider, I get that. Ultimately, all things come to an end, huh? Even JW started slowing down. But he still kept living his life. The poet said, do not go gently into that good night. Rage, rage gets pretty tiresome. Can you imagine going over to the fire pit and listening to rage against the tide? The way he did not go gently is he insisted on and succeeded in living his life in his own particular way. And everybody in this room knows what I mean when I say it. I'm astounded to hear that up to the night before he went into his final hospital visit, he was wearing people out, staying up to the wee hours, right? And driving down to Drake's in order to get his favorite meal and then coming back late at night in his own car under his own power. One of my favorite humorists, similarly humanitarian and embracing, was Robert Benchley. And why in the world did I think of Robert Benchley and connect with JW? like JW, he loved staying up late with friends till the wee hours, nursing a drink. After he died, fellow humorist, fellow Ohioan, James Thurber said, well, they're going to have to be staying up and late in heaven now. Lucky angels. I'll bet they're having the time of their infinities. I love that image. Elizabeth, he raised a rock.
Amen.
Yeah. It's been a joy working with you, and of course we continue well with the foundation. You all have told us, you guys, what a wonderful experience was having this with the granddad. We could relate to every single aspect of your experience. So I love this idea that somewhere out there on a cool night, he's sitting nursing a bourbon around a fire pit with friends, lucky angels, having the time of their infinities. Thank you.
Former Georgetown debater and friend of the program, Tom Rollins.
Good evening. I'm Tom Rollins, and I debated for Georgetown University back in the 1970s. JW was ever present on the national circuit at tournament after tournament. JW coached the University of Kentucky team and judged me in many, many rounds. He also coached my contemporaries, the stunningly good team of Gil Skillman and Jerry Oberst. Frighteningly stunning good team. Just as I was graduating from high school in the early 1970s, JW created the Tournament of Champions. With that, JW reshaped the entire world of high school debate and speech competition. The Tournament of Champions isn't only the toughest national contest in debate, it's nearly impossible even to qualify for it. Debaters have to do very well at least 2 national competitive regular season tournaments even to attend the TOC. Most teams spend their entire competitive year trying to earn the 2 qualifying bids required to attend TOC. Tens of thousands of students compete every year to attend. Hundreds of thousands have done so in the TOC's 50 years. And now, thousands come to UK every spring to vie for a shot at this unique tournament. Debaters and speech competitors will still recount decades later how they did at the mighty TOC. Nick Saban is retiring to great and deserved fame because he competed magnificently for a national championship. Ladies and gentlemen, JW created a national championship. I left debate after I graduated from college, went on to a career in law and business. I wound that down and resurfaced back to the debate in 2006 when I worked to start a program in speech and debate where my son and daughter were going to school. I was at a giant tournament in New York City in the crowded cafeteria where hundreds of kids were seated, and they started whispering and looking at the entrance because a tall, older fellow with all of his reddish hair still in place, imagine my envy, strode amiably into the room. It was J.W. Patterson, a godfather of debate and the founder of the Tournament of Champions that every one of those kids aspired to attend. I hadn't seen him in decades, and he hadn't aged a goddamn day. I realized then that J.W. had found the secret. The fountain of youth flowed not with water, but with bourbon. So I started drinking bourbon. So far, so good. I want to say 2 things for folks here who don't know about competitive debate or don't know a lot about it. 1, it is a brutally challenging activity. Studies routinely show that people's greatest fear is public speaking, even greater than dying. Now imagine this. In debate, not only must you give a roughly 10-minute public speech in front of a judge and sometimes an audience, but after you sit down shortly thereafter, another speaker, loudly and at high speed, will attack everything you just said. Maybe dying doesn't sound so bad. 2, debate is an all-consuming sport. If you make it to the final round of a national tournament, you will debate in roughly a dozen 2-hour rounds. That's 24 hours of teeth on edge thinking and speaking in a 3-day tournament. And then there's preparation for tournaments. College debate is roughly a 40-hour-a-week job on top of going to college, not unlike Division I college athletics. Weekends are either at the dozen or so national level tournaments each year, or they're in the library or at the laptop, feverishly getting ready for the next tournament. Into this rough world came JW. He was sweet, kind, and funny. But don't let that warm accent fool you. He was canny and clever, and he coached in this ferocious activity to great success. I won't recount his many wins here, except to say that he coached national champions, top speakers at the national tournament, and top 10 teams in each of 4 decades. Oh, and he kept the UK debate program funded and growing for over half a century. I know there are other academics in the audience. Getting that to happen is only worthy of someone who wrestles alligators for relaxation. I say to the retiring Nick Saban, stick around for another 3 decades and match JW's record. JW's passing, like it or not, makes us reflect on life and death. I want to share some thoughts on these matters because JW's life and passing are informing. Life. What do we make of those who assert that their own irrelevance is mere dust in an unimaginably vast expanse of time and space? Shakespeare's Macbeth, in a dour moment, shouts, "Out, out, brief Kendall! Life's a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing." Now, I'm sure JW would say he heard a lot of debate speeches that were sound and fury, signifying nothing. But let's be clear that God and Jesus strongly disagree with Macbeth. But I want to take Macbeth's claim for what it is. Not whether our lives matter in the hereafter, but rather, do they matter in the here and now? Could it be so bleak? Is all our striving futile? To Macbeth's claim, I offer a simple debate-style 3-word rebuttal. J.W. Patterson. It wasn't just the wind that came sweeping down the plain from Oklahoma. It was a gentle and unstoppable force of nature named J.W. By the way, it's a great story on how he got stuck. He invented a national championship. He coached champions. And he coached hundreds who never won a national title, but whose lives were forever changed by the special fellowship of competitive speech and debate. Elizabeth recently told me that, the debate community, it's almost like a cult. Debaters here in the audience, God bless our cult. The man himself, J.W. personally, had a shaping influence on all of us. In this intense fight for glory, there was always J.W. with a smile, a warm greeting, easy laughter, and yes, sometimes a shot of Maker's Mark. Aristotle believed that man is the only animal that laughs. And Lord Sterne claimed in his great novel Tristram Shandy that every time a man smiles, but much more so when he laughs, it adds something to this fragment of life. J.W. brought smiles and laughter to this life by the bushel. J.W. took the edge off, and with the edge removed, we all remember that we are not torn apart, but we are bound together by our striving, that we are members of a wonderful community. I count among my best friends so many years later in life, those I knew through debate, if only because no one else really understands us. And in passing from this life, does JW's life and every life signify nothing when it ends? Again, my 3-word rebuttal, J.W. Patterson. Okay, here comes the hard part. I have some questions for you all that demand answers, and I need to hear the answers from all of you. They're easy answers, only 3 questions. Question 1, J.W. is gone, but his brilliant daughter Elizabeth and his 3 marvelous grandsons succeed him. I ask all of you, is that nothing? No. Good. Question 2. J.W. coached hundreds of students in the skills of argument, reason, research, winning, and losing. And now, his gifted debater, Dave Arnett, succeeds him as the coach at UK and has already won a national championship. Again, I ask each of you, is that nothing? No. Last question. As I said earlier, the J.W. Patterson Tournament of Champions for 50 years has challenged hundreds of thousands of high school students to greater competitive work and achievement. and hundreds of us have personally had our days brightened by his model of cheer and compassion. We are now suffused with his spirit. I ask this one last time. Is that nothing? No! Of course it was far more than nothing. Let me quote the great desert warlord Ouita Michel of the Ouita tribe in Lawrence, Arabia. He was a river to his people. JW's gifts of self and of the institution he created will ripple through this world for as long as people debate issues of shared concern. JW was and is to me ageless. Much as I've come to love bourbon, his life is a true fountain of youth. He lives on in all of us, and we are grateful for the gift of himself that he selflessly shared with us. I will close with a happier note from Shakespeare, this time not from one of his characters, but from the bard himself in one of his sonnets. To me, fair friend, you can never be old, for as you were when first your eye I eyed, such seems your beauty still. Fare thee well, JW, and we thank you.
One more story, and then we're gonna go to the room next to us, which is the music room, and have some refreshments. So, you know, these stories that we tell about Dr. P, they're glowing about his, how much he cared for us and smart as he was, but it wasn't exactly a straight line. So to tell it really like it was, and anybody who debated with him knows exactly what I'm talking about, from somebody who was the bartender at virtually every tournament we hosted. So in the 90s, in the middle of the Henry Clay debate tournament, the squad was sitting in the Lexington suite at the Harley Hotel. And we were exhausted, and we were hungry, and just grouchy. And we were just really not looking forward to all the classes that we had missed and all the work that we'd have to do because we were all here hosting, you know, all these schools. Then walks in Gordon Mitchell, who was an assistant coach at Northwestern at the time. Tall, slender guy, always walked around like he had no care in the world. Smoked a lot of weed. So Gordon sits himself down on the couch and goes, "What's up, fellas?" And one of us says, "This sucks. We hate it here. No one else that debates has to endure all the crap we have to." And Gordon grins and pushes his professor-style glasses and says, "You know, Dr. P's a genius. Do you know how lucky you boys are to be doing all this stuff? What JW is doing for you is giving you this greatest shared experience you'll ever have. You guys are like soldiers in a platoon. And instead of going through boot camp and calisthenics, you get to host these tournaments, set up the suite, play the hit parade, host the Run for the Roses where you pour hip juleps and give people bourbon balls and light their cigars. You go on these van rides 12 hours at a time, making memories in those road trips." He goes, "Yeah, it's a lot of work, but the shared experiences that you're complaining about now will be the stories that you tell over and over again. He's introducing you to your future best friends, and all of these shared experiences will form a bond that others will never have. UK debaters are part of a fraternity that continue to come back year after year after year, long after we have to. Complain all you want, fellas, but the rest of us are jealous about what you guys have." You know, I think about Gordon Mitchell, the Oracle, right? He was so right. We are best friends. We do keep coming back. And all those traditions that we complained about, we now long for. And we owe it all to Dr. P. We're all part of this magnificent fraternity known as UK Debate. And it all started with Dr. P. He was our coach that became our friend and who introduced us to our best friend. And he gave us the ride of a lifetime. And it's going to be unbearable to continue without him. But we'll see him again. And for the time being, we'll see him in our dreams. I love you, Dr. P. Thank you.